and gentlemen, welcome to yet another wonderful episode of Game Chat with Tom and Lucas. I'm Tom,
And I'm Lucas.
and how are you doing on this wonderful Friday, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Even better than last recording, as not only have I received my PS5 courtesy of Thomas Hubbard, but I have unboxed it and have been messing around with it a little bit the last couple days here.
Let me just fill in the audience in that it took Lucas like 3 hours to set this thing up, and he had to FaceTime me throughout the entire process. It was a little ridiculous, if you
Listen,
ask me.
Tom, when you're switching over from Microsoft to Sony, it's this just, it's a different breed of animal you're dealing with. And I just
One
wanted
of,
some advice from an
oh my god.
experienced Sony platformer such as yourself to make the
I mean,
process a little bit
hey,
easier.
I was glad to help you out, but like when you asked me, "Hey, do you know if the HDMI cord and the power cord are the same length?" I said, "No, Lucas. Who the fuck would know that?
You had it
That's
already
an
set up. I
idiotic
figured
question.
I figured you might know. You had it set up, you took it out.
I
Visually I couldn't
didn't
tell.
I
So
didn't measure the cords, bro."
So anyway, audience members, Tom was not of much help to me, but we ended up just
That's a lie.
FaceTiming and talking about other things as I assembled my console, and
Oh
then
my god.
yeah, got it ready for use.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, now Lucas is in the next gen and he's part of the PlayStation ecosystem, so we're very happy to have him and very excited to go on many gaming journeys with our PlayStation 5s, you know. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Let's preheat that oven. Just want to once again shout out our Instagram at GameChat_Tom Lucas. Definitely give it a follow if you haven't. As we've said before, that is our main way to essentially, give out information, interact with our fans and audience, and you know, try to stimulate new ideas moving forward. Thank you to everybody who has been listening and also followed us on said Instagram. Yeah, man, we're just gonna keep churning out content, keep doing new different things. Pretty excited. We kind of came up with a little bit of a schedule idea of what we want to go with. For now, we're sticking still with. We're gonna try to put these out every other Friday, but in terms of like content, we kind of want to go on a little bit of a rotation of like just episodes that we've already sort of done, kind of just these discussions with like me and Lucas. um and then also we want to incorporate like game based episodes as well, sort of similar to what we talked about when we discussed The Last of Us Part 2. And then finally we also, as we posted on our Instagram about, are starting to incorporate guest based podcasts, have other people on the show, things like that. So if you want to be on the show, if you have an idea, you have something you really want to talk about related to games, hit us up. We're gonna be also hitting up our friends and different people that we know to get on the show. So lots of good stuff moving forward. Ain't that right, Lucas?
That is correct. We're gonna have a wild time here on the Game Chat with Tom and Lucas show slash podcast slash experience for our viewers. We're gonna have a lot of fun. A lot of stuff coming your way in the future, which Tom and I will plan out for the next month. I'm trying to get him to do a compilation of God of War deaths, but he's saying he might
I'm
not have
not
the storage space for that. So we'll see. I think it'll be
I-
pretty funny, but we'll have to
I'm
see what
not
happens.
against that idea. I just gotta figure out a structure of how I want to like capture those, because it's just a lot of me dying right now. I feel like I've been playing the game for 6 hours, and in actuality, I'm probably like an hour into the plot. So I don't know, man. I'm playing on that God of War difficulty. It's tough. It's tough. It's very tough.
It is tough, but you know what? Like all things, if you power through the hard part, there's a soft, gooey center waiting for you.
Okay.
Speechless, ladies and gentlemen. Tom doesn't know what to say. God of War's got him shook right now, but that's okay. I'm looking forward to him, getting through that experience and becoming a greater gamer because of it.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. But yeah, um, I think now would be a perfect time to introduce our guest. So this episode, as you probably have seen by now, if you're listening, is called Game Design with a Game Designer. And one of my good friends happens to be said game designer. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome my friend and fellow gamer, Tim Carbone, to the show. What is going on, Tim?
How's it going? What a momentous introduction to game. I'm glad that I'm not only I'm glad that the tier of it goes that I'm a game designer first, but just below that I am also a gamer. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you can't really. I figure you can't really be one without another. You
it's
know,
it's
like,
pretty difficult.
yeah, can you really design games if you don't play games?
You'd
Find
be
out. We'll get
surprised.
into that. Oh man. But yeah, so welcome to the show, Tim. You are our first guest that we've ever had on this show. So we're very happy to have you today.
I'm happy to be here. This is my favorite podcast on the internet right now. I'm
Oh, hey,
tuned into
thanks,
every
man.
episode, so I'm glad to be a part of it.
Oh, that really warms my heart and tickles my soul. All right, here we go. We're getting into the meat and potatoes now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the game design with a game designer interview featuring the one and only Tim Carbone. So once again, Tim, thank you for coming. I'm really excited to do this, and we're gonna dive right in with the first question. But tell me, Tim, why did you end up choosing to go to school for video games?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's about as generic of a story as you could really get. Honestly, I like games, and I kind of wasn't sure what I wanted to do going into college. I figured I was probably just going to do comp sci at UMass because every one of my friends was going to UMass. A bunch of my family went there, and I
Cool,
didn't
man.
really have any drive to do anything specific. But I liked coding, and so it made sense. And then my mom was like, "You need to look into schools." I printed out a couple programs that sounded like something you'd like, and she just like threw down a stack of paper in front of me. And I always think it's like kind of ironic, or not ironic, but it's funny that the first one on the top was Champlain, which is where I ended up going, which is also the first school I ended up touring. And so a lot of that process was my mom being like, "Oh, he'll like all the schools that he goes to," but it was just like, no, I just like the first one that I hit, just luckily. So yeah, I've done a bit of game stuff in the past. I've written for a blog that I write on my side. That's just about game design. I played competitive Minecraft and was the head. Or I was an admin of Reddit's largest Minecraft competitive community when I was in high school, which was a lot of fun. I got to. That was pretty much my first like foray into game design because I was making maps just to try out things in that game. And it was just a ton of fun. I got to meet a couple of popular Minecraft YouTubers at the time, which is not very exciting in like hindsight, but it's like it was cool at the time for like a 16-year-old kid to kind of meet these people.
Any
Um,
ones we might know of off you want
uh,
to name drop,
Seth
or
Bling
is
was the
that too
only one that's
tacky?
like reasonably famous. He made a lot of Redstone stuff. Like he was very well known for like making a computer in Minecraft using Redstone and stuff like that. And he did a lot of live streams for us. They had a couple of YouTubers that would do a lot of the face value refereeing and commentation so that we could get a lot of people in. But yeah, so I had a bit of background with like games beforehand, and so I went in because I really liked the program that they had. They had a lot of alumni that were at studios that I recognized, and they really focused on getting you into making games as quick as possible so that you could learn as quickly how to fail and then get better at things as time went
Oh
on.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's pretty much how I got into choosing Champlain. It's Burlington, Vermont's beautiful. The school is really small. It's only about 2,000 people. I wasn't very swayed about the size either way. I just really liked the program, and yeah.
But before we move on, what the hell does competitive Minecraft entail? I have no idea what that could be,
So
like, at all.
Minecraft has a ton of game modes. So this is it. It's kind of bad to say like this is the biggest competitive Minecraft community on Reddit, but it was at the time. But it was also very focused on a single game mode. So basically, there was this guy who was very popular for making maps that were these like really large worlds that you had to basically figure your way out through to find all the different colors of wool and put them on a victory monument. That was like an adventure for a bunch
Ooh,
of people playing it. The guy who made it was named Vex,
okay,
if you
okay.
know that. But he also made two maps that were basically that, but they were very thin, long lanes, and they were mirrored against each other. And so the idea was that you'd have two teams of four on either side, and they would basically be racing to get the three wool that are in various dungeons and places around the map. And so this community kind of formed around him with these maps, and
Hmm.
a couple people on Reddit that were really interested in making that into like a big community. And so after those maps came out, a ton of people made their own versions of like the two lanes that are mirroring. And so I got in because I saw a couple YouTubers in a tournament for them. And so I thought that looked pretty cool. And I joined a team. And I was like a strategist. I wasn't really good at Minecraft, honestly. I'm not the best player. I'm really not great at PvP, and I wasn't really great at figuring out the TNT cannons that we really need to get good at. But I was really good at finding new strategies on the maps to find a good, efficient way through them in new ways. And after a tournament and a half, I believe they were like, "Hey, you seem reasonable enough to lead us. Why don't you join the admins?" And I was like, "Okay." And so I
Nice,
started running the
nice.
tournaments, and it was super fun. Like it's a memory that's very lame, but it's also like something that I think is awesome in my head.
I don't think that's lame at all. I think that's
Um,
pretty cool. Like, I don't know about y'all, but like that I guess you can really do anything to make Minecraft competitive. Essentially, it just sounds like they created a game mode.
yeah, pretty
Do you
much.
know? Is that kind of how, like, is that like a standard type of competitive mode in Minecraft? Like
Not at
doing
all. I don't even think it was like
okay,
really at the time. Like I think you really had to be interested. Like you would probably only know about these maps if you already played that guy's adventure maps and were just looking through his maps and saw these, or if you were part of this community. Um,
hmm hmm
and we had like two communities where it was like tournaments and then kind of like a ladder tournament system that you were just constantly playing matches to like increase your rank. But it was very much like a not super popular at the time, and it's dead now. Like I forget what year. I only got like a year or two out of being an admin before we kind of just like things petered out. People weren't as
oh,
interested
definitely.
anymore. But for the longest time, there was a server that housed all of the maps that we could play on, and I went back there in college. I think my sophomore year, and I just like looked at a couple of the maps that I played on, and then the ones I'd made, and I was like, "Damn, these suck." I'm so glad that I'm better at game design now.
Oh yeah, definitely. Damn, that's pretty cool actually. I like I didn't even think that that could be a thing other than
I'm
I
surprised you
don't know.
didn't know. Like we've just known each other for so long, but
I know, dude. I know. I like yeah, I really had no idea about that. So that's actually really interesting that that's kind of like what started you down the path was like Minecraft. Shout out Minecraft for
the
being
next
fucking
generation of game
pervasive.
designers.
Well, that too, right? It's just like it's one of the most exactly what I was talking about earlier with like low ceiling, low floor, high ceiling type games. It's like Minecraft is Exhibit A there, you know. Um, nice, nice. Okay, next question we got Lucas. Lucas?
Yeah, just to double back prior to the Minecraft, in terms of right, like picking a school, um, was like is the application process for that like do you have to meet certain criteria to apply to get into a program like that?
Yeah,
Do you have to
so
have a portfolio?
so I actually did have to create a portfolio at the time, in my senior year of college or of
Okay.
high school. I definitely have a portfolio now because it's super important to have that, and we'll talk about that later. But
Having a
um,
portfolio was like a main reason why I did not pursue any sort. Like I wanted to go to RISD, and they were like, "Oh, have a portfolio of all your works," and I'm like, I don't have works.
yeah, I don't think I really had anything besides my blog at the time, but the blog super helped. So kind of give a background about my school. So Champlain's whole thing is that they have multiple majors, which is not as common as you'd think. They have multiple game majors focused on the different areas of game development. And so they have game design, programming, art and animation is together, and then production, which is like the business side. And I think even this year they're adding new ones for quality assurance kind of focus, and then like marketing focus in the games industry. I don't know too much about it because I'm obviously out of that college, but it was very enticing to be able to go and say like, oh, I'm going to be working with a bunch of people that are focused on a specific area rather than a lot of programs that are kind of trying to teach you everything at once. And they get you to focus towards the end, but it's not as like you probably aren't growing as much as if you knew what you wanted to do and then went through the 4 years of focus on that rather than like, here's a semester focused on design and art and like, what do you like? I don't really know. And so,
Yeah, it's the liberal arts school approach. Like, here's your gen ed
mhm.
stuff
Yeah. And
before you can
so
actually get to learn what you want to pay out the wazoo for.
exactly. Which they didn't really do. They had a bunch of liberal arts, like gen eds that I had to take. But for the most part, I was started on the game development kind of stuff really early.
Let me like game design, like gen eds revolving around
Hmm.
game development, design, and things like that. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so in terms of portfolio, the artists had to show art that they had made before, and it just had to be like drawings and paintings and stuff like that. And then programmers, they actually didn't even need to know any programming going in. They just had to have really good math scores. And for design, it's weird because they were like, we have to have some way to tell that you are actually like good at making games. And so I had to make like a board game. I made this really shitty board game that was like, I had played Until Dawn recently, and I was like, I want to make a slasher board game. And so it was like
Shout out to
multiple people.
Wendigos.
It was a hit and roll game, which I apparently love hidden role games because I ended up making another one during college. But
I've played
um,
many of those with you.
you
So
yeah, we played a ton of them, and so I made that game out of just a bunch of paper and markers and buttons and stuff, and I sent a bunch of pictures and a rule set to them, and I got a portfolio review when I did a campus visit once, but. Yeah, the application was early decision, and so I basically had to be like, "This is the one school I want to go to," which I did early decision so that if I didn't get in, I would be able to apply to other schools. But yeah, I sent my portfolio in and they let us in. They for a time they had a sort of major that was like game exploration where your portfolio might not have been good enough or your scores might not have been good enough, but they still thought
like
you
an
were good enough to
exploratory
like
track.
yeah, it was an exploratory track pretty much.
That's what I got in at UMass. Fuck that kind of stuff.
There was so many people that weren't on that track that should have been. And then I had a friend who was on that track. He works as at Blizzard now on Hearthstone, and I'm just like, there. Obviously, it's not a good sign of like who gets in or not. It's really hard to tell that stuff as early as 4 years before they're actually getting into the industry. But I thought that was a funny coincidence that he was just like, he's not good enough, and then suddenly he's like amazing.
I hate those things about schools, man. It's like, oh yeah, we didn't think your application was good enough, but we think you're good enough to at least get to the school, so we'll put
You're
you in
good
this
enough to give us
weird.
money.
Exactly. It's like, we still want your money, so we'll put you in this weird limbo area where you'll be stressed out for like 2 years because you won't actually have a major until then. Ugh, that's. Oh.
Yeah, I got in on that pass, and it's been smooth sailing since then, I guess.
Nice. So like once you got in, and obviously you have an entire education's worth of classes and assignments and different things you did, but like what are some of the different things you did there that really kind of stuck with you, that you thought were like significant in your time there, that really helped develop your skills?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that anyone that went through this program would say is that we basically have a production class every year, at least one semester. Our senior semester, we have a full year where we are working amongst the other majors, and so right from the first semester, we're working on teams making games. We don't really know the process yet at that time, but we're learning it, and we're just getting into the groove of making things together. And it's really cool to see the development of that. So freshman year, first semester, we have this game history and development class where it's half focused on getting together and learning the process, learning production tools and things like that to make a game. But we're also learning about game history. Like, we're literally taking a history class on like the earliest board games up until like the pinball era to like sideshow games, and like it feels weird. It feels like the stereotypical thing that you would be taught at like a video game college. But that was like the closest it ever got to the stereotype. I feel like I took a ton of design classes and video game classes, but this one was like unapologetically like, you're learning about video games here, which I thought was like super cool, especially since my teacher was just this like hippy dippy dude who just like would play music beforehand from like the 70s and 80s and would try and tie the bands into like his lesson just because he liked music so much. And he was like, the one thing I always remember him saying is like, we'd get to like the 70s and the 80s and he'd be like, there's not a lot I could tell you about this time period because everyone was super high during it, and so no one remembers anything. And I'm just like, that I didn't expect such honesty, but I'm so glad I got it.
That's awesome. Yo, I swear we had the same teacher. I also like I took one game design course when I was at UMass, and it like game design was very loose because we just made like 9 different board games. But everything you just said relating to playing the music and relating, he did that like word for word. I actually ended up finding his game and booth at PAX East one year, which was kind of cool.
Oh, that's pretty nice. But yeah, for other classes, we got a lot of, for design, we got a lot of dabbling in all of the different areas of design. And so I took a level design course. I took a systems design course. I took a UI and UX class. And it's really to just get you a base knowledge in everything. And then your last 2 years, you kind of focus on like the areas you want to go in. And so I got a minor in game programming because I really like programming. I really like being able to take like a design and just make it and like make it into something like how I think it should be made. And so that was my focus, but I had friends who did a narrative focus where they just spent class writing stories for games and learning about how narrative in games is told in different ways. And I think my favorite class that I ever took was applied ludology, which is about the psychology of games. And like, you're learning like why people play games. Like, you're learning different motivations for different types of players. You're learning how to target specific mechanics to specific like motivations of a player going into a game. And it was really cool because our teacher, I took that class when I was in Montreal abroad, and she worked at Ubisoft on, I believe, For Honor at the time. And so she was awesome. She was the coolest teacher I've ever had, and she taught me so much. And it was just like a class amongst friends, just like learning about things in a really casual manner. But we also had this really cool research project that we had to do throughout the entire semester. And basically it was a 3-stage presentation where we were researching a specific aspect of game design we liked. And I chose, because I didn't really have like a favorite genre or anything that I wanted to learn about. I had a few friends that did that, but I was like, I'm really interested in movement in Metroidvania games. I'm just like curious how it like fits within the Metroidvania system. And so I did a research project with like academic articles and like videos and real analysis on like motivations of like why movement systems, and especially innovative movement systems, work so well within a Metroidvania formula. And I could go on and on about that because that was probably my favorite project that's not like a game that I've ever worked on. Um, but it just felt really cool that I was having fun while also making myself a better person at my job.
Definitely, definitely. What would you say? I mean, if you don't have an answer, whatever. But what would you say w- is an example of a very innovative movement system you found in a Metroidvania game?
Yeah,
I'm sure you had examples
oh,
for
I
your
had
project.
a ton of examples. That was half of it, was just finding games and analyzing how they were doing things. I would say the most innovative one I saw was the game Dandara, which instead of moving around, there's white surfaces all over the 2D map, and it's a Metroidvania, and you can teleport between them if you have direct line of sight. And so it's kind of about like teleporting between surfaces and like also doing combat at the same time. It just was unlike anything I had ever seen before. But Ori and the Blind Forest was the example that I'd always go back to, where I was like,
True.
all of the upgrades in this game are focused on making you move quicker and more efficiently through the world, and that game is a blast to play through. And so it probably was the inspiration for that project at the end of the day.
That's awesome, actually. Yeah, that's a game. That's a game I have dabbled a little bit with, but I really need to find the time to just sit down and blast through it because, like, oh, it looks so good. Damn, that's actually really interesting, though. Like, that's like why people play video games. I feel like that would be right up my alley too. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I can send you some resources sometimes because there's some cool GDC talks where there's like, I actually, the model that I used to model the motivations of Metroidvania players off of was the lead designer For Honor. He made his own like system that kind of took a bunch of other people's models into one, and it was really interesting to just hear him talk for an hour about like the different ways like players have so many different motivations when they're playing like a game that there's certain like sliders that are just like slid one way or the other of just how people are super interested in similar topics that can overlap.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, yeah, moving right along. Um,
Moving right along. Correct. That is correct. So, follow-up question, I guess, in terms of your schooling and classwork, how did the pandemic impact your school experience and and curriculum, if at all?
Yeah, I feel so bad for the people that were this year where they had a full year of it because I only had 2-3 months with it from March to May last year. And I can't say that I liked it. Like, it kind of sucked. The disturbance of it all just kind of sucked more than anything. But the good part of it was that all of like my game development stuff is located on my laptop anyway. And so
yeah,
moving my laptop from campus to my room, not super difficult. Video calls are annoying, but everyone can deal with those just to like make it all work. And so it was really easy to get everything up and running. And at that time, my big focus was my senior production game, which we were trying to release on Steam. And we luckily didn't have to make any cuts. We planned out things perfectly so that we ended up finishing it exactly as we wanted. But
was that your vacation box game?
that was Box Voyage, yes.
Yes, yes, that
um,
was fun.
it
That
was,
was difficult.
yeah, the demo wasn't great, but I love that game. I'm super proud of that game. Just getting it done, and I got to work with. It basically was like the culmination of everyone I liked working with and also wanted to work with all 4 years, just on a team. And then I got to make a game that was also really fun to make. And so it was just like a perfect situation. Um, but yeah, I kind of lost track of that question, didn't I? Um,
Box Voyage, $2 on Steam, ladies and gentlemen. Travel package number 9999.
I can't say that it isn't buggy, but it is a lot of fun if you sit some time down with it. It's super satisfying to play around with. There's some funny ideas and funny jokes in it because I'm not the funny guy on that team. There was one of my friends, Dakota. He was super funny and made everything feel funny in that game.
75% positive reviews on Steam.
I'm sure
I
there's
can
like 4
also.
reviews.
There is 4 reviews.
Three out of
Exactly.
4 ain't bad. That's a passing grade.
Yeah, there was
Hey,
one review that was really
I'd give
upset
you a
because it
thumbs
didn't
up.
work too well because there was a couple bugs, and I was like, I never saw those bugs, so I can't say I would have fixed them beforehand. But
Oh yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it from the small demo I played when I saw you at PAX 2020. Was that
it was
2020?
2020, right
Yeah,
before the
that's what I thought.
pandemic.
And we talked about like GDC getting canceled and stuff.
Yeah, I was pretty upset about that. I was supposed to go.
It's an interesting like reflection of kind of the industry as a whole, just considering like, oh, okay, these are what the people who are up and coming in the industry also have to work with. It's like a microcosm of the fact that, oh yeah, for the past year, video games as an industry has probably benefited more than any other entertainment industry. And like everybody else, they've been doing the entire thing from their rooms and their offices at home. So it it's definitely interesting to hear that it like was a similar type of deal with you, and that ultimately you guys didn't really have to sacrifice anything in order to, you know, still make that work.
Yeah, we were lucky just because we were pretty much at the end of our development at that point, and so I mean, the team's motivation definitely dipped, but I was very focused. Like, this is the one thing that I really have going for me during this pandemic, and so I'm just gonna stay focused on it. And I can't say that that's the norm for most people. This pandemic it's really hard to work with design over video because a lot of our work is the tiny moments where you're making a comment to someone that triggers something in your head that makes you think of something else, and then that's just how design works. It's constantly iterating just through those in-person discussions, and so it's hard to replicate on video, but people
Oh
make it
yeah.
work.
Well, even when it comes to QA, right? It's like, oh, you're doing play testing and things like that, and it's like, what? Are you just gonna watch someone stream your in development game on Twitch, and the whole team just sits there and is like, ah, I see. Like,
Yeah, it was pretty hard
you
to
know,
QA during that time. I think we got a couple people in to fill out a form when we'd send them a build, but other than that, I think we were just testing internally and hoping for the best, which is not the way you should go about things. But at that point, it's you're seniors. You want to get out.
yeah, and you make do, like the whole world has been doing. So, I'm glad to hear that. That kind of kept you going throughout that time because as we have all experienced at this point, and now that we're sort of, at least in the U.S., starting to turn the corner on the whole thing, I'm glad to hear that you had something to keep you going during that time. So, well, well, let's dive right into it. We'll jump to the game design sort of section of our questions since we were sort of steering in that direction anyway. But you know, we'll sort of parlay it off of the pandemic, but what are some of, you know, your hardest challenges you've had to overcome, like while doing game design, and also some of, your favorite challenges that you've overcome? And challenges being, a very general term, but just parts about your profession that you've really found challenging or enjoyed quite a lot.
Yeah, I'd say of current challenges I'm going through, the biggest one I've found is, so I've been working in mobile video games for actually all of my time, professionally in the industry, and so I've worked on a couple, um, yeah, I'd say in mobile, my biggest challenge is trying to balance that fun and profitability. And so I think mobile has very, very honestly and very well earned a kind of negative taste in a lot of gamers' mouths because of the free to play market that is spreading even from mobile into the AAA space. And I don't think I think a lot of negative taste is just thrown for no reason. It's just people want the world and they don't want to pay for it. There are a lot of mobile games that are just kind of there to make money and not be fun. And so I think it really is hard to find because you can't just be like, if I make a fun game, someone's going to play it and they're going to buy it and I'm going to make millions off of it. Like, that's so impossible for someone to plan for. And so your best case scenario is to really just like think, how do I make a fun game and shift it into a way that is profitable? And so it's constantly going back and forth between those things. And it's a really interesting challenge to work with, just because it's not something I expected to think about when I was thinking, oh, I want to make video games.
The business side of it, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
generating that money.
super, super hard to generate money in a booming industry that is also has a million people jumping in every day. And
Well, I feel like as developers and designers, like that's not what you're focused on. You know, at least like from you know the things I've seen, just being a fly on the wall in the industry. You know, like I feel like that's never at the forefront of whatever your project is.
I think in ideal world, yes, but I think a lot of in an ideal world, the business person tells you, hey, you need to do this to get money, and you just kind of do it, and it's not actually that bad to the player. But the designer kind of has to be the gatekeeper for the player and be like, okay, I know that the player's not going to like that aspect of it. How can we spin it so that it's better? Or how can we make it less of a pain? Or how can we make up for the pain that this has in a different area? And so it's really like finding that balance of you don't, as a designer, I don't want to put in things that are like a pain to get in when I'm playing a game. Because when I play a game and I see those things, I'm like, I don't like that. I'm not having fun doing those things, but they work for a lot of people, and finding how low you can put the nuisances is a really fun challenge, because I'm constantly pushing back on the team of like, why do we have to do that? Like, could we do that in a different way? Could we frame that in a different way? So yeah, I'd say that's like the best challenge in the worst kind of way.
Okay, I feel that. Yeah, yeah. It's like I feel like there's probably so many different aspects you got to think about when you're doing that kind of thing, and I feel like mobile gaming specifically, and maybe full disclosure, ladies and germs, like Tim here has been the one person who has even made me like really consider like mobile gaming. Like he's 100% right when he says like at least for me, mobile gaming, I'd always looked at it as sort of like a oh, why would I want to play games on my phone? But I feel like you've been very, very insistent on like, hey, like there's a lot of value here. Don't count it out just because it's on your phone. Which I've now been able to like jump over that hurdle, so that's besides the fact. But I feel like mobile gaming specifically is like, okay, well, yeah, we want to make this game, but I feel like that revenue stream is probably there a lot more than it is in other kinds of games. And I say that knowing obviously you have your Fortnites and your free to plays and your games as a service and everything we talked about in episode 1 of Game Chat with Tom and Lucas, which is now available on Spotify, by the way. Please go check it out. But you know, I, I guess is that kind of the case? Is that way more at the front of people's minds in your experience in terms of working on mobile games versus just I guess in school you're not really like, oh hey, like how do I make money off of this game? You're just trying to get a passing grade and do something you enjoy. But I mean, I know you've made other kinds of games, obviously. So does that question make sense?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it
kind
it,
of
it,
rambled a
it
bit.
kind of does. So I will say that we do actually really think about the marketability and the business side of it when we're in class, especially when we have the producers on the team. Their focus is like, what is the marketing plan for this? Like, what are the competitors that we're going against? Like, how much money can we expect to make with this? And so I've had experience like thinking about that stuff, but there is like honestly a stigma. Like it is a fair stigma that's in the mobile space, but like you said, there is a ton of cool stuff going on in mobile, and it's just a totally different market than what I think most people that are like thinking about video games are thinking. Like Lucas, how into the mobile game space are you?
Well, I'm a unique
You're
case.
asking the right person.
No, because see, I have an iPad, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's definitely like I was big into PUBG back in the day, and that was exclusively like I didn't have a console at school. That was exclusively on my iPad.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so that was really fun.
This man
Because
would
obviously,
do homework in the library with us,
yeah,
and just he would always be there for an extra 4 hours after everyone left, because when everyone was there doing homework, he was just playing 2K and PUBG on his iPad.
That's hilarious.
Lucas loves the mobile games.
that I did. Although those are like specific, because PUBG is obviously like not designed like for mobile, and then 2K is was that was like a game you had to buy. I think it was like $8 or something, not like a free to play, but like purchases in game, which I guess is like usually the design.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, my only like issue with mobile games is like all the like YouTube ads I get
Yeah.
for like Rise of Kingdoms or like whatever it is, and then it's like this definitely is not like what the game is. Like this is definitely like false advertising.
Yeah,
But I
it
feel like you see that with like the bigger uh games. It's not
yeah, it
like
has to work, right? Like we wouldn't be like it has to
because
be working because we're talking about it. Like we wouldn't talk
yeah.
about like Clash of Clans at
True.
the time or what is it? Raid Shadow Legends. Like we
Raid
probably
Shadow
wouldn't be
Yes,
talking
that's
Legends.
about
what
it
it is.
if we
Oh,
weren't constantly being peppered by those ads. So they clearly work
They're just
somehow.
so bad. Like the ones where it's like not even in English. It's like clearly in a different language that's just translated, and it's like nobody talks like who even like gave this the green light to publish for an American audience? But like I see them every day.
Facts. Yeah, no, the ads are totally a problem, and it's really just one solution like to the idea of monetizing mobile. There's the microtransactions. There's so many different types of microtransactions. There's different revenue models. I'm so glad that Apple Arcade is a thing now, just because it's shaking things up a bit. It's giving the chance for these premium games to like have some breathing room, and like no one wants to pay $8 for 2K if they don't have to. Like you are a specific case where you had to buy this game.
I
And
did. I needed something to do during study time in the library, so that was what I chose
that's
to
absolute
use.
facts.
But yeah, I guess I don't know what you would categorize. Like I feel like most of the mobile games are like those like things where I'd see something for and be like, oh, this looks cool, and they'd always like, all be the same. Where it's like, oh, like there's like gems you can buy. It's like it was like all like production based, and I was like, oh, this isn't what I thought like
Mhm.
this would be. But like there's definitely been some good like I've had like Risk and like Monopoly like on my iPad, and like those have been, like Monopoly was like how like $7 or whatever it was, and Risk was
Risk
probably
Mobile is lit.
like
I have
yeah,
also purchased Risk Mobile.
really really good. Like because those are like not like your typical like mobile game
it's
where
a
like
board. It's like a
it's a
mobile
board game
version of a
on,
board game.
yeah, which like I think is worth like um the money, because like I can't bring a board game
Well,
uh
often
out.
though, like mobile games specific, like for mobile port, and at this point, we should just do an entire. We'll have you back, and we'll do an entire episode on mobile games, because
Totally.
like the more we're talking about this, the more I actually find I really want to talk about this. But like specifically board games and ports of those things, like I find mobile is probably the best place you could have that, because it's like a to buy an actual tabletop game is ridiculously expensive. I don't know why. They got to make money somehow, I guess. But it's like it's way too much money to buy a game that requires way too much overhead to actually get a squad there to play your game. And it's like, oh, let me spend $80 on this board game, and I'm going to play it in 5 years, maybe 3 times. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's a lot of tabletop games. So, like, Risk, for example, like, we'd just be chilling, hanging out, like, waiting for meetings or, like, in class or whatever. And it's just like, you know,
Passing the iPad around
pass
like
and
six
play with
people.
Lucas's iPad. We do it in car rides and shit. Like, and it's just like, oh yeah, we can just play a full ass game of Risk right now, and it's also not gonna take us 8 years to finish a game of Risk. It'll take us an hour.
Yes,
Like,
because the
Yeah.
dice rolls are simulated. You don't actually have to like do the
yeah,
math yourself. It's computers are great. They can do that in like
yeah.
a second.
Yeah.
And then you get into like actual like ports of other games. Like for the examples coming to my head right now are, I know they put a lot of Final Fantasy games on mobile, and then they even make like chibi versions of Final Fantasy games. Like, I
Yeah, I think they.
really wanted to play the Final Fantasy 15 little cute
Oh,
version
yeah, the
on my
mobile version of
iPhone.
that. That was pretty
Yeah,
cool. I thought that was like a really interesting idea. Just like, I can't
I did
imagine
too.
how many people actually played that game, but I hope it did well because it's just like such a ballsy idea of like, we just ported this entire game into just like a different art style and put it on mobile.
And it looks pretty in depth too for what they did. Like I, I never played it obviously, and Final Fantasy 15 was great, but like seeing trailers and things like that while I like on the game while I was at playing the on PS4, I was like, wow, it doesn't really look like they sacrificed a lot of this. The combat all looks like it's there. All the mundane nonsense shit like cooking with your boy band at a campsite in the middle of nowhere is there. The flying cars are there. Like, how did they do this? Like,
Anyway, but yeah, we'll have to do a mobile episode because there's definitely a lot of potential there for stuff we can
yeah.
hit on.
Well, we
But
just went like 20 minutes on mobile games alone. So yeah,
yeah,
that's going to be added to the topics list. We interrupt this episode to bring you a word from our sponsor, Anchor. Are you a fan of podcasts? Ever feel like trying it out for yourself? With Anchor, it could not be any easier. If you haven't heard about it, it's the most seamless and easy to use tool out there to get you started on your podcasting journey. Anchor helps bring your show to the next level. Anchor can distribute your podcast for you, making it available on all major platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, wherever you could possibly think of. Anchor comes equipped with creation tools as well, which allows you to record and edit your podcast all from your phone or computer, making it easy to do while on the fly. It can also help you get paid. That's right, paid through sponsors like this one, all without a minimum listenership, which helps those who are just starting out, like ourselves. And the best part is, it is 100% free to use. I'm very serious when I say this, ladies and gentlemen. It is 100% free. It's everything you could ever need to start a podcast of your own, all in one easy to use and convenient place. To access it, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM or the Anchor app on your mobile device. I couldn't recommend it enough, ladies and gentlemen. We wouldn't be doing this without it. It's helped us start our journey, and maybe it can help you start yours too. Thank you for listening. Now back to the show.
um, but yeah, back to game design, which is the focus of this episode. Um, question for our guests. So you just went over like some of the more challenging aspects, but what would you say was the most like enjoyable part of your game design schooling experience?
Yeah, I think like my favorite part of design is
Other than your trip in Montreal, because I want to dive a little more
Yo,
in depth
spoilers,
into
dude.
that later.
spoilers. Yeah, I think so like I was saying, my favorite part of design is the ideation into implementation. I really like being able to create an idea and then just like code it and get it to work and like be able to show someone like this is what I'm thinking about doing. It's really cool to just be able to create the things that you think of. And I'm sure like artists and musicians and filmmakers like all have this like idea of it, but it's just really cool to like create things. And so I think my favorite time the work I'm most proud of for sure is my senior capstone game. So the way that capstone works at Champlain is in the fall you're on teams of either 4 or 5 people of the different majors, and you all make your own quick prototypes in 12 weeks, and then you present them to the teachers. You let them play them, and then based on like the variety of the games that are there, and like the scope of them, and how many people are needed on certain projects, like they will cut the massive amount of games down to like 8 to 10 usually. I think they've gone as low as like 6 or 7 before, which is a lot. And so the people from the games that get cut are reabsorbed onto different teams to kind of keep working on those games in the spring semester and finish them. And so as I had said, I worked on Box Voyage in the spring, and that was because my game in the fall had gotten cut. And Capstone in the fall is very much a time to like focus on you and like show off your skills of the last 3 years. And so the spring is very much about like finish a project, get working together with everyone, but it's really in the fall about like what are you good at. And so it was really cool to be able to like be the product owner of this game that I was really passionate about. The game was called Showstopper, where you are actors trying to die on an enemy's sword rather than trying to kill them. And so you're swinging your sword out of the way while trying to land on theirs. And it's all got this like theater theming and everything. And it's a 2.5D platformer. And it was super fun. And like, we focused a lot on the future of the project and what it would be rather than tightening up everything that was in the project. But
You
I
only have a semester, you know.
Yeah, you only have 12 weeks, and so it's really like hard to get everything you want done. And so I'm the only designer on my team. There are 2 other programmers, but I program as well, and I really like to program, and so I'm also doing that. And then I'm also the product owner, which means that I'm kind of the vision holder of everything. And I'm not like the boss, but I'm the person making sure we're keeping on track with the vision.
You're
And
the
then
Kevin Feige.
when our producer, yeah, I'm pretty much the Feige. Much smaller scope though. And then when our producer was out of town, I'd have to do some production stuff too. And so it was really fulfilling to be able to like basically create a game I was super, super proud of. I'm super proud of that game still because I think it really was a unique idea. And I think it really is a lot of fun. But I burnt myself out so hard on that game. I was working so hard to make it as good as possible that I didn't give myself the time that I needed to rest. And so that doesn't sound like probably the best time I've ever had at school. But the best part about it to me was that time I got to spend working on the things that I liked with the people that I liked. One of the programmers on my team, I had worked on every project that I worked on in college up to that point, in terms of the teams. At first, it was just like accidental, and then we realized we liked working together, and so we kept making sure we'd be on the same team together. And then my producer was a guy I've known for 6 years that ended up going to the same college, and then the artist ended up being a friend of mine that I had met the semester before. That was really awesome, and so it was really cool to work with
Studios get made.
a ton of people that I like on a thing that I was really passionate about. So yeah, that's my answer to your Lucas question.
That's how like studios get formed and stuff like that, though. That's like exactly what you want to go for, you know.
And
Like
it's happened. There's a studio. So this studio is called Sunday Month. They've made 2 widely popular release games called Dad Quest, which is you're playing as a dad who's throwing your child around as a weapon, and then Diary of a Spaceport Janitor, which is this kind of atmospheric, really artful game about having like a lower class job and like what it entails, kind of not knowing who you are in that kind of world where everything's passing around you. But they're currently working on a game called Paparazzi, which you might have heard about. Basically Pokemon Snap, but with dogs. It went around Twitter and the gaming news sphere a while back, maybe a year or 2 years ago. That game is super fun. I played a couple builds of it and it was really creative. But that was all the people that worked there were all friends from Champlain that while they were working on classes, they just formed their own company and started making games together. And they're not the only ones. And so it's really cool to be able to just like meet a bunch of creative people and vibe with each other and make something
Oh
cool.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I looked up that Dad Quest game. That definitely looks like a fun time. Okay, so moving on into the next section of the podcast, sort of, your experience is post graduating, real life as they would say, in this job market and in this profession, like what I'm kind of gonna loop some of the questions we have together a little bit. But what does like job hunting look like when you're a game designer and acquiring these contracts, and then kind of jumping off of that, tell us about some of the projects that you have been working on. Like I know at least a couple of them, but for the fans out there, tell us. Shout out your work, my friend. This is your time to shine.
Yeah. So, starting with the work, because that's probably the thing that's going to lead into less of a conversation than the other thing. Is basically I have worked with basically the same people all of my industry experience. So,
It's not a bad thing.
2018 this summer, I had an internship at Disruptor Beam where. So they are most well known for their mobile game Star Trek Timelines, which is a character collector RPG where you collect various characters across the Star Trek universe and use them for things. And I worked there on two games. One of them I cannot talk about because it never released, but it was similar to Star Trek. It was just a reskin, basically, of it. But the one that did come out, and my name is in the credits, is Archer Danger Phone, which is a game based on the Archer TV cartoon animated series from FX. It was a
Which would just like to shout out Archer. That show's brilliant. It's wonderful. It's hilarious. If you haven't seen it, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was a mobile idle clicker game basically. I don't think it's the most fun of a game, but it was really fun to work on. They did a great job replicating the art style of the show and bringing it into the game, and the humor really was well translated as well. And so I thought I got a lot of good experience off of it, even if it wasn't like a game that I'm like shouting from the heavens that I was working on. Um, and then after graduation, I was looking for work for a while. Then I got contacted by a guy who used to be the project manager of the Archer game when I was working there. He started a startup with one of the programmers from Disruptor Beam, making a separate mobile game, which I can't really talk about it because it's not out or announced either. But I worked on that for 3 months, and I was just doing basic generic design for stuff. I was playing through the game. I was rebalancing a lot of stuff, pitching ideas and proposals for features that would make sense. And after that contract ended, I got contacted by my previous lead from Disruptor Beam. So Disruptor Beam basically like started to shift into making tools for live mobile game development to help other developers. So they shifted out of game development itself and more into like creating the software that teams would use. And so they sold off the Star Trek game to the publisher of the Star Trek game, which was Tilting Point. And they formed a new studio around keeping that game up because it's still very profitable. And
Okay.
so
Real
yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick, when you say live mobile game design, does that just like is that anything specific or like
It's basically like creating the back end of a lot of infrastructure stuff in terms of like stores and cloud saves,
okay,
and
okay. That's what
microtransaction
I
stuff,
figured. Yeah. Okay.
AdSense and all of that, and basically helping teams get that in without having to do all the work themselves. Because networking, especially in like server side stuff, is really I work in this like game company and it just goes over my head, just like Thomas is doing on the
Yep.
camera here.
Yep.
Um,
A friend of mine like transitioned to like the networking side of like our job, and like he was telling me all about it, and I'm like, nope, nope.
yeah,
One networking class I took, I got a D. Nope.
It seems pretty difficult from all the people I've talked to, and so I will keep my programming knowledge focused on small implementation of mechanics and stuff.
It's like, what the fuck? I don't know how to make the internet work.
But yeah, so that studio that formed out of Disrupt Your Beam became Wicked Realm Games, which I work at currently. I got picked up because they are starting. Well, they just started work on another new game with a really cool license and a really cool game like design behind it. And it's really cool because I got in because they're like, hey, we know you are really good at like the prototyping phase and like getting things into the engine quickly. And so we could really use your help right now for a contract for a couple months. And so I worked with them for the prototyping phase, and I'm currently in the pre-production phase with them. And I can't say much more than that besides I'm doing a lot of cool design, basically thinking of how the game's going to come together. And it's you're going to see it sooner rather than later, but I'm happy with what we've been doing so far. It's definitely the coolest thing I've worked on in the industry.
And in the Patreon only post show is where Tim breaks all his NDAs and tells us all the stuff he's working on currently and has worked on that he can't actually talk about to the public.
Of course, you got to monetize this content.
Exactly what we were talking about. You got to think of ways to make that cash, dude.
Lucas is shaking his head at us.
So that's kind of interesting though. Like it's so you're I guess like is applying to jobs looks a lot different than if at all because
Oh
from
yeah,
what you're
I
telling
totally
me
didn't
it
answer that
looks like
half of the question.
no, I mean that's okay, but from what like you're telling me it's looking like you're basically getting like cherry picked and poached for by people you've worked with in the past and people who just know about your skills and the stuff you can do, which in my opinion is like very impressive. I think that's awesome that you're literally just getting reached out to for specific tasks and things like that.
It's really lucky, and I will say that I am a lucky person that is in a situation that is totally different from the norm. I'd say I'm
Okay.
being picked up by people that already know me. So the two contracts that I've done are with people that I've worked with before, and so it is nice that they've cherry picked me. But it's not like they heard about me from someone and figured I could be good for the job. It was like they had a need. They knew that I fit that need, and it was easiest just to get me in on it. And
Oh
so
yeah.
it's actually like the sad truth about the develop like specifically design is it's a really competitive industry to get into for obvious reasons. It's a lot of people's passions. They think I play games, I can make them. The people that come into school and learn what it actually takes to make a game. Usually we drop a lot of people first year, first semester, just because they didn't realize what it actually took to make a game. But a lot of people want to get in, and especially with Unity and Unreal being so open and accessible to people, a lot of people don't need that like foot in the door. They have the experience because they can just make a game on their own and learn all those things on their own. And so like when I talk about game school, it was right for me because I had the financial means and I know the way that I learn. And I knew that I needed that sort of structure to get the connections and to get the industry knowledge that I needed. Not everyone is like that, and I've heard tons of stories of people that are just like, I learned how to use Unity in my basement on my laptop, and I made a couple projects, and I got talking to people through like PAX and things like that, and I got a job out of that. I've talked to a couple people that are like that, and I think it's just very hard to get in because so many people want to get in. There's not a lot of junior positions because a lot of companies are looking for the people that are most experienced. Especially with design, you get a lot of worth from people that have been through the ringer before and know a lot of the quick sticking points. And so you'll usually even see on like junior applications, it's like one shipped title preferred. It's like so hard. Like, how does that make sense? But like my senior team shipped a game onto Steam, and so it's possible for anyone to do at this point. And so the bar is just kind of constantly being raised. And I did not have a lot of luck when it came to the job market. I definitely sent out over 100 applications over from graduating to getting my first contract. And I got to the final stage of interviews with a lot of companies, a lot of big ones and a lot of small ones, and it just never worked out. And I couldn't tell you what I did wrong, or what I did right. And it's a lot about just knowing people in the industry, which is, I don't like saying that, and I don't like that being a thing in like every industry. Is like
I was just gonna say
everything
that.
works is like
yeah.
knowing who you know. It's just like, I don't like that about it, even if it is the way that it works.
I mean, that's why, like, I joined a fraternity. Like, for the most part, I was like, do I have any, like, actual marketable skills? Probably not. I should just, like, meet people and charm the shit out of them so they'll hire me. But no, that really is the case in, like, so many fields. It's just about who you know, and it almost feels, like, unfair that that's the case. But, like backtracking a little bit, that's kind of what does a junior position at a company even look like? What kind of game does that look like? What kind of development studio does that look like? And if you don't know the answers, that's totally fine too. But like you touched on that a little bit, and that kind of really stuck with me. It's like, what is like an entry level position? Because I mean, I guess I don't really know what quote unquote the bitch work is when it comes to designing a game, and I don't know if that's necessarily what a junior position looks like either. I just, I feel like a lot of jobs, if you're coming in, you're doing the mundane, tedious tasks that quote unquote anyone could do. But I'm not saying that
Yeah.
about you. I'm just saying jobs in general. But I like that is something I'm very interested in
Yeah.
hearing if you got them answers.
Yeah, I do. I think it definitely varies from studio to studio, because some studios hire junior because they only have the financial means to hire someone that's less experienced. And so those people will be doing a lot of the work that a senior might be doing. It's just that they're being paid less for it. But then you'll get bigger studios that have the financial means to be like, hey, we need to train someone to do this minor work, and like rise up through the ranks. And so I went to school with a guy who had an internship with Sony Santa Monica this summer, or last summer, and then he transitioned into a full-time position. I believe. I haven't talked to him in a little bit. I'm pretty sure he's still there though. But it is a lot of
I
bitch
applied
work.
to work there too, so
I would love to work there too. It seems pretty cool. God of War, anyone? But yeah, I have
like lit.
I have done a lot of the bitch work, quote unquote. My internship on Archer every week was a new task of like, please organize this spreadsheet of all of the assets that we were sent by FX. Another week it would be, please play test this one level and balance it to make it feel good at the specific point in time that a player would play this. And it's like all over the place of like things that could get done. I know there was one contract that I almost got that it was all they would be doing. All I would have to do in this would be set up the camera position and the character positions for cutscenes in like a Harry Potter, the Hogwarts like mystery game, whatever it was, the one that like everyone memed about all the timers and stuff in it. Like how you'd run out of energy when you're being choked out by like an evil wizard or something. Like all I would have been doing on that job would have been like taking the camera and placing it in different positions, and like half the test was like draw out like this kind of stuff and
What this looks like from like different angles and things like that.
yeah. And so it kind of totally varies. I'm lucky where I kind of pushed through all of that, and in my current position I'm doing a lot of the big design stuff with the senior designers, because mobile usually keeps the teams pretty small. And so I think I'm currently only working with two other designers, and they're both seniors.
Okay.
And we have a lead designer that's like a design director, but he's less focused in what we're doing moment to moment. But yeah, it is a lot of like manually, like a lot of content creation is a lot of what junior designers will do, where they're given the rule set and they're just like, think of cool ways to do these things or plug in the numbers in the right positions, and that's all you really get to do.
Well,
I've been lucky
that's
that I got a
nice.
lot of variety though.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I was gonna say, at least from the examples you've given, it sounds like you get some autonomy in those sort of roles, even if it is quote unquote, more tedious work. At least you kind of get to leave your own personal kind of touch on it in a way.
Yeah, you might on the scale of the team, like at Sony Santa Monica, I don't know. Maybe the designers work like the juniors are all doing cog work and they just feel like they're in the machine and they're not really making a personal touch. But I hope that they get to have some of that autonomy at various points, just because I can't imagine being a creative and not having any creative control at all. Like even just throwing an idea out to someone, like it's really hard. Like it's super daunting for me talking to these two senior designers to throw an idea out, because it's like they have more experience, they know what's going to be good or not. And so when they like an idea that I like or that I've pushed, I am super proud of it, because it feels like I've overcome that sort of junior hurdle of like being taken seriously.
Definitely. And I feel like video games is one of those mediums where it's, you know, if you if you are enough of a gamer and you play enough, and I feel like it's very easy to be able to develop, for lack of a better term, an authority on those kinds of ideas. It gives you a valid perspective, is what I'm trying to say. So like that, even though it might be daunting, it's still pretty cool that you get into positions where you're like, oh hey, like I don't think this is going to work, or I think this would be cool, and things like that. So that's definitely interesting to hear about as well. And I imagine it's so variable depending on studio and game and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. But I it's interesting to hear that those are what like kind of entry level positions would look like, because I imagine a lot of people are probably listening to this who want that kind of information.
Hmm. It's hard to get candid junior position information, just because I feel like the only people left in the industry are like people that haven't gotten super far into it yet, or have been so far into it that their advice might not be super relevant anymore.
Just to jump off that real quick, to assist those aspiring game designers that might be tuning in. Um, like you said, job market can be hard to get into without those connections. So, assuming a wannabe game designer doesn't have a job currently, how would you suggest they you can build their skills on their own?
I think the thing that you'll hear almost everyone say is to just make something. And so if you can push yourself to really learn those tools like Unity and Unreal, or Maya and Blender, and like the tools that it takes to make some aspect of a game, like uh
No,
just
Maya.
go and do it. Like it's super helpful to like have that knowledge. But even making just like a game with Twine, which is like a super easy like branching narrative tool, just writing, like making a board game is game design. Like the first things I did in college were making board games, because they're super easy to just throw a prototype together and like actually play it out, because you don't have to code all the specific rules and everything. And so just like getting in the habit of like making things teaches you the process, and then it teaches you like the mistakes that you're going to make, and how to fall out of that stuff. And so I think connections are huge, and I think if you talk to people on the internet that are interested in video games, that's always a good option, is just like meeting new people and talking in different spaces and like learning new things about different games. And I think the one pitfall I saw a lot of students fall into was that I thought I was the norm, where I was hyper focused on like learning the game news and like keeping up with the industry, and like even if I wasn't interested in a game, I might look at it and what it is to see what like people would like about it. And I realized quickly that a lot of people come in and they're just like, I really like MOBAs. Like all I play is MOBAs. All I want to make is MOBAs or strategy games. I knew a guy who was like obsessed with strategy games, and that's all he ever wanted to make. And it's like, you should really be comfortable making things that you wouldn't personally want to play, because it totally broadens your mind of like how to create something for someone else. It gives you a chance to like, I might not like strategy games, but I could find fun ways to make this strategy game that I'm making something that I would want to play. And then that's a totally different, like, innovative new game. Like, something that crosses barriers or is super accessible to people. Like, I've seen that a ton with student games. And so just making stuff and not being afraid to fail is, like, the best advice I can give.
Yeah, it sounds like essentially you're just like, yo, get that perspective. I really liked how you touched on that. Specifically because, like, you see all these games that come out that are hits nowadays. And even we talked about a game like Devolver's Phantom Abyss that's going to come out. It's like you hear about all these different games nowadays, and it's like, oh, hey, describe the game to me. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it's a mix of A game, B game, and C game. So it's like coming up with a quote unquote completely original concept in the industry as it just grows and gets bigger and bigger, I feel is always harder and harder and harder. So it's like, okay, what original idea can I come up with by essentially mashing together a bunch of non-original ideas? So that's why I really, really think your point on perspective, it makes a lot of sense, because if you can get that knowledge of what goes into all these different kinds of games and all these different kinds of genres, it can just lead to something creative and amazing, and something like, I don't know, maybe you could start the next genre trend, like, for lack of a better word. But yeah, that's really, really interesting to hear.
And like I am very much a person as a player and a developer that is very heavily interested in innovation, and like I don't want to make a game for like my idea if I don't think that it's like a new idea that I haven't seen done before or done in this way. And so I think a lot of people that want to become game designers are like, I have this really cool game idea, and the ideas portion is like 1%, and it's really about like, you can have a great idea, but until you get it into the controllers and get it into the hands of someone and they tell you that it's good, like, you can't know it's going to be good. Because there's so many factors that are at play, and like there's so many tiny rules that like when you're coming up with an idea, you might not figure out this edge scenario that's going to happen that totally ruins the idea. And so like just knowing that the idea is literally like 1% of the work is something super important. Is you can't just be an ideas guy. You got to be able to figure out how to find the fun in what you're looking for.
Yo, speaking of fun,
Ooh, a
Tom,
segue.
hey, segue. Tom had some questions for you regarding a abroad experience.
Yeah, I really, really want to hear about your time in Montreal. Kind of just to like wrap this out, because I going abroad during school is something that I've always found super enticing, and that like is my one regret that I didn't do during my time at school. I was too busy like presidenting some fraternity that is probably gonna die in 2 years anyway. JK, I love you, AXP. You made me who I am today. Go Crows. Um, but yeah, I like really, really want, you don't gotta go super in depth to it if you don't want to, but like I really kind of want to hear about at least like, what kind of work you did there. You mentioned you worked under a pretty prominent designer who was working with For Honor at Ubisoft, and also kind of like what was one of the like most important things you gained out of your experience there.
Yeah, I could talk about my Montreal days forever. I took my fall semester of my junior year, about an hour and a half away from campus in Vermont, which doesn't feel very far away to be in Montreal, especially. But living in that city is a very different vibe. I love that city. I would live there if I could. It's basically like Boston, but everything runs better and the food is
It's
better as
so
well.
fun. Shout out poutine.
The poutine is so good. I have a list of places that I just went and I loved and I'm going to go back to. And I've been back many times. Like, I go to a lot of concerts in Montreal because it's so close to Burlington. I could just drive over the border, go to the concert, come back that same night. I did that for Portugal the Man, I think, and a couple other artists. But anyways,
I tried one of those places you recommended. It was like the soup dumplings. Those were
perfect
really, really
place.
good
I love
when
that
I went.
place. That's the single place I go to every single time I go to Montreal because it's so good. But yeah, most of my time when I was not eating food was applied ludology is where I took that class during that semester. I took a emerging media class, which was very focused on different forms of emerging media, and so VR and video DJing and machine learning and like a lot of different aspects of being creative and not just focusing on games. Like this was a class that was very focused on just media in general.
Some
And
cutting edge type stuff.
yeah, and then I took a narrative design class, and then I took a game tech class, which was basically diving deeper into Unity for designers. I knew most of the stuff because I had already taken programming classes up until that point, but designers still need like a little base level knowledge of coding in order to do a lot of scripting that the job requires. Um, and so yeah,
Real quick, were you enrolled at a school there when you went?
so it's
Like,
a
is that how it
weird
works?
case where we actually have our own campus in Montreal. It's a single building, and it's like 2 computer labs, a couple classrooms, and like a kitchen and like lounge space, and that's about it.
No, that
Um,
that still makes sense though.
it was pretty awesome. I basically lived in a converted hotel my entire time there. Like they were converted into student
Nice.
dorms, but it was a hotel. I was living on like the 30th floor. There was a pool. There
Oh wow,
was a lot of really cool stuff going on there. And we were directly connected to the subway through that building. So to get to campus,
that's
I didn't
perfect.
have to leave the building at all during like any of the cold time. I think I was outside a total of 20 seconds from my bedroom to the classroom, which
They
was
they
pretty
have
cool.
stuff like that here in the Twin Cities. They have skyways because it just gets like so brutally cold that they're like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, let's not make people go outside if we don't have to.
Yeah. And so a lot of my teachers were very varied in terms of how they were connected to the industry. And so my emerging media teacher was like a filmmaker. My applied ludology teacher was a designer on For Honor. My game tech teacher was he did a lot of consulting work for Kickstarters because he had done a successful Kickstarter when he was in college. And then my narrative design teacher, I don't remember what he specifically did, but I know that he made toys. Like he made action figures out of like just melting wax down and making them. He was a fucking crazy dude, but he was super nice.
That's wild.
But yeah, it was really cool because a lot of what we did at that, like we didn't just like take those classes in a different country. Like there was MIGS, which is I forget what it stands for, but it basically was a convention, not like to open to the public. It was more dev focused, kind of like GDC, where I got to meet a ton of people. I got to go to really cool talks. There was one talk about the game Control before they had really shown anything about the game. They just kind of talked about the design philosophy and like what they were hoping to make with the game, which was really cool because
That's
I ended up loving that
super
game.
cool. Yeah.
Um, but I think the
Lucas,
coolest
that's a
part.
game you should play if you haven't yet. Control.
Oh, totally, Lucas. You should totally play Control. It's pretty quick. I think I beat it in like 8 hours. But it's super high quality. But the
Is
coolest
that
part, yeah, go ahead.
is that like what the platforms is that on?
It's on Xbox,
PlayStation,
PS,
Xbox,
and
PC.
PC.
Oh,
So
sorry, every
you can get it on your
four.
PS5. It's got that PS5 update. They actually gave it away with PS Plus. So unfortunately, you probably don't have that, but um, unless he does, I don't know. But Thomas definitely has it.
I have it in like 3 different places. Yeah, I bought the disc. I had it on PS Plus, and then I think they also gave it away with Game Pass. I don't
I ended up platinuming it on the original release because it's a pretty decent platinum, not too hard to do. And then I got the PS5 version. I was like, oh, I want to play the DLC and I have to finish the game to play the DLC, so I'll just play it. And then I was like, oh, I'm pretty much near the platinum again, so I'll just do it again.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the coolest thing that we did there was studio tours. So we did a lot of tours of like actual game development studios. And so Montreal is basically like the biggest hub of the big studios and the little studios. I think Sony, I don't know if they have anything up there. And I don't think Microsoft or Nintendo do. But
no, it's a lot of like third-party developers.
Yeah.
Ubisoft is up there.
Yeah, Ubisoft is huge there. We toured their studio. We toured EA Motive. Crystal Dynamics we looked at. And then a couple of other like indie sort of smaller studios that I can't really remember off the top of my head. But like, didn't learn.
No, Avengers was going to be a dumpster fire before it even was.
I did not know it would be a dumpster fire or not a dumpster fire, but I did see Captain America's back in gameplay on a screen while I was walking through, and I had to. All these tours you have to sign NDAs beforehand. Now the game's out, so I don't think I will be sued for this one. But I saw Captain America's back, and it looked exactly the same as it does now, pretty much.
See, I told you, ladies and gentlemen, we'd get him to break one NDA.
I did technically.
It might not meet the statute of limitations anymore, but we did it.
Yeah. But yeah, I ate a ton of good food in that city. I met a lot of really cool people. I got to go to a lot of events that I just made connections with people, and I would, in a heartbeat, move back up there and live in that city again because it's so nice. It's so nice just to have a functional subway system. In comparison to anything in America, it's just miles ahead, and so that alone is like enough for me to move there.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Me and Lucas went there for spring break one time, and we didn't. There was no educational purposes involved, obviously,
Yeah.
but I really really enjoyed my time there. So that's awesome to hear that you liked it. That's the fact that you got to do all those studio tours too is like amazing to me. That's literally the insider information, man. That's
I have
so cool.
I have EA socks. I have Activision socks actually. So here's my camera. None of you on the audio can see it, but I got these Activision socks because I answered a question correctly during our tour.
Nice. That's how I won a keyboard at PAX East.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Full disclosure, I cheated though.
You don't admit that.
Dude, you just gave that away.
This is your time to segue into the next topic, Lucas. You got to get the heat off of it.
I mean, that kind of covers it. That was a lot of what we had for you.
Yeah, it was a lot. I'm sorry for rambling as much as I did. But,
oh my God! Please no. This has been amazing. I've learned a lot. I have so many more questions that I want to ask you, but I feel like nobody's gonna listen. If
you can ask me any question anytime.
Exactly. But if we kept asking you here, we might have to do a part 2 of this sometime. And focus on some more questions in this aspect. But honestly, this has been incredibly informative, and I really, I don't know about you, Lucas. I've gotten a ton out of this. I've really enjoyed it. My one question for you is: did you ever go to Saint Laurent Boulevard, and did you ever eat at the Frite Allures on Saint Laurent Boulevard?
I don't know if I ate at the Frites there, but I definitely have eaten at Frites is all over the city. Just for context,
yeah, that's what I figured.
I don't remember. I definitely was near Saint Laurent where I lived. There was one specific poutine place that I would go to called La Banquille that had they claimed they were the first place that would put anything besides the normal poutine toppings on poutine. So I would always get this poutine that had guac, chipotle sauce, onion strings, and bacon bits on it, and it was baller.
Oh, dude, that's my go-to poutine when I get the poutine truck at PAX East.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. This is going to become a poutine podcast.
This is
ladies
the
and
poutine
gentlemen.
podcast now. Lucas, get on this train.
Dude, I had duck poutine like every day. We were in Montreal. Just
that
spoiled
stuff's pretty good
myself.
too.
Yeah. We stayed above this. It was this big old Irish pub that had live music called McKibbin's. And there was
That's actually where I ate my first dinner during my semester there. That's where we had dinner there during our orientation.
no shit.
That's crazy.
That's so cool. We literally like right next to it is a tiny little alleyway that's a staircase up into the loft apartment that was
That-
our Airbnb when we stayed there.
If you look on my Instagram, there's a post that I have from my first day there, and like the third picture on it is like the picture of the meal I had there.
I'm gonna find that. Find that. That actually is so funny. Yeah, Montreal is a cool place. Shout out to the French Canadians. We love you.
They're pretty nice
Uh,
about English there. I had one time a guy did not like that I did not speak French, but he was a bit of a wanker.
I don't even know what is the French equivalent of a wanka.
I don't know. That's why I just said it that way.
What a sacre bleu. Oh my lord. Yeah, man. Like I said, I have a ton of questions I could ask you and could make this entire podcast like 6 hours long, but I feel like we should start wrapping it up. I don't know, Lucas, you got any lingering things you want to ask our boy?
Not my question was a meme question, and we can
Ask it. Ask it.
He's not even all right.
He's not gonna get it.
Have okay.
No one outside of the like people.
That's
who
why it's a meme.
Go ahead.
All right. During your time in Montreal, or just ever, have you ever had a soak?
I feel like I've heard about this joke before, but I can't remember it, and so I'm just gonna
It is
not.
Montreal. It stems from our
I
spring break
believe
trip at Montreal.
it involves someone in the bathtub. Is that
Close.
correct?
That's very close. It was a hot tub.
No, that's it.
Gotcha.
No, it was a bathtub.
It wasn't a bathtub.
was-
It was like a jacuzzi.
No, it's a jacuzzi bathtub, Lucas.
Yeah, but
Let's
that
do
is
exam-
okay.
full-on
That's
hot
very
tub.
separate from like a regular bathtub. Let's make that like.
I
It's
mean,
a
sure,
definite
it's just a
upgrade.
fit. It's still a bathtub and a bathroom indoors. It's just a much fancier bathtub.
It was very fancy.
It was nice. It was certainly nice. Did you go in any hot tubs when you were in Montreal, Tim?
No, the hotel did not have a hot tub. We did have a pool, and I used that a couple times. I was pretty upset that I didn't use it as much as I should have. But once you get into the semester, it's kind of hard to like focus on anything but schoolwork.
Someday, Tim, we'll make our own swim team and relive our famous glory days from the high school swim team. Me and ladies and gentlemen, shout out the Haverhill High School swim team between what
2012 to 2016 was my years.
Yeah, I was like 2012 to 2015 because I graduated a year before and I didn't do a freshman year. Yeah, shout out Coach Nigro. Shout out the Haverhill High School swim and dive team. Shout out Sean Driscoll and Andrew Hannides, my fellow captains. We love you. Now we're just rambling,
Yeah,
though.
I was like,
but
like
Kids like we have to end this soon,
we
and
have
then
to
just
end
goes
this.
on a swim
Also,
team.
let me just make a quick like award speech and just thank people from my past.
well, thank you for joining us for another episode of Game Chat with Tom and Lucas, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we'd like to thank you all so much for listening. We really hope you tune into this one. I think it is a very high value podcast. This episode in particular has been great. I've loved it. I've loved every bit of it. And, follow our Instagram. Keep checking out our content. We're going to keep coming at you with more and more and get better and better. I don't think we didn't do anything to record it this time, but we hopped on webcams while we were recording it this time. So we're going to start integrating video into our episodes. We want to get on YouTube pretty soon. So, once we're there, you guys will know about it. But please, please, please follow us on Instagram at GameChat_Tom Lucas. Tim, you wanna plug yourself a little bit
Not much to plug.
before we go?
I don't use social media as much as a lot of people, but if you want to follow my Twitter, I'm at I'm a tin can. I believe it is currently, which probably should change that to something I remember consistently. But we'll get to that someday if I care about social media again.
Yo, in all honesty, check out Box Voyage on Steam. If you're looking for a game to play and you got nothing going on,
It's like it's
I
like a brief hour if you're good at puzzle games, and so
I thought it was a very innovative puzzle game. I thought the way they did it was very cool, and that's only from the demo I played while Tim was showcasing it last year at PAX East. So I cannot recommend it enough. I in fact like literally added it to my cart during this podcast. So please check out his game. I enjoyed the small bit I've played of it. But yeah, thank you so much for doing this with us, Tim.
yeah,
Appreciate it,
thanks
man.
for having me. I love talking to you guys. So anytime I'm welcome here, I will be back and terrorize you with more stories of Montreal.
Oh, absolutely. And we will definitely have you back at least for a mobile games podcast because I think we hit some gold in terms of content back there. So
We're pretty good at this whole thing, aren't we? Like,
yeah. But yeah, this will you guys will probably be hearing this a week from the day we're recording it. So I believe it's Friday the 28th. Knockout City will still be free during that time. It should be right. One, two,
yeah,
three,
3 extra
four.
days, I
Yeah,
believe.
that's yep. Yeah, and like I said, hit us up on Instagram if you got ideas, you got feedback, you want to get on the show, or even if you just want to play some games with us. Lucas is on PlayStation. I'm on pretty much everything. Tim's on
Also
also
PlayStation.
pretty much everything except
Yeah,
Xbox.
pretty much everything but Xbox. I'll get one of those eventually when something comes out.
Yeah, yeah. Or just build a PC. The better way to go.
Dude, Microsoft hate,
Don't.
bro. That's a future
It's
sponsor
not
that
that I
you're
hate.
just
It's.
throwing down the toilet.
I am not by any
Cross
means
it off the
dissing
list.
Microsoft. I just think that you are better off just
Kid's
buying Game
about to diss
Pass on a
Microsoft.
PC.
Boom, where there it was. The diss was thrown out.
My operating system is made by Microsoft, bro. I couldn't do this without Microsoft.
Yeah, but that's not. They
Shout
don't want
out
you to
Bill
buy. They want you to
Gates. I
buy
hope
their
your
console,
divorce
Tom.
isn't that bad. Oh my god. All right. Well, like I said, thanks so much for coming, guys. See you next time. Peace.